Welcome back, Judgment Crew. Today I'm going to be reading another Reddit story, and you're going to help me decide if they're the a-hole or not, but not really deciding because at this point the video's already out, but you can let me know in the comments if you agree with me or disagree with me.
Brother made my life hell, then got my wife pregnant. Now he wants my help after our parents disowned him and left me their $2 million inheritance. My younger brother, David, has always harbored a deep-seated resentment towards me. If you think it stemmed from jealousy, you'd be wrong. He was the favored child, not me. There was no reason for him to be envious. To give you some context, our mother always indulged David. He was the golden child of our family. She cooked his meals, did his laundry, and even asked me to help him with his schoolwork.
I don't know if you can hear
I was
Ashley
expected to assist him simply because we were
Those
family.
bananas are
But I never
good.
he was the golden child
Just
of our
eating with
family.
bananas. Hold on.
She cooked his meals, did his laundry, and even asked me to help him with
David,
his schoolwork.
golden child.
I was expected to assist him simply because we were family, but I never received the same consideration. I accepted
Bananas
this,
do look good,
as I
though.
was quite independent. Perhaps it was partly my fault for always meeting his needs without expecting anything in return. He never helped me when I needed it, and only approached me when he wanted something. While I
And so they're both brothers, and they don't know how.
Yeah. I already sense resentment.
Okay.
was a quiet,
that's easy.
introverted
We
kid
can
who
end the video
enjoyed
there.
studying and keeping to myself, he was loud and rough, just like our dad. I also tend to be straightforward and honest, never
Ooh. Just like our dad.
Abuse.
sugarcoating
Daddy
things.
issues.
I believe
And
my
daddy
mother may have
issues.
developed a negative perception of me because of my straightforwardness. This favoritism made David the family's darling, and I didn't mind it while we were growing up. However, problems began when he started bullying and mocking me for being different
Yeah, I
from
don't know how
him.
you can be the darling
He would tease me about my height and the fact that I wore glasses.
See that they're putting Ferrero Rochers on the cake?
Yeah, they're splitting them in half. Interesting tactic.
And there's Kit Kats on there too.
And there's a Nutella entire jar on the top.
He would sneak into my room,
I didn't
read my
honestly
diary,
even notice that
and
until
then
you just
complain
said
to
that.
my mom about what I had written. When I yelled at him and
Read your-
complained to our parents about him invading
is
my
it a
privacy,
diary?
they would laugh it off, saying it wasn't a big deal. He did more awful things, like nearly breaking my glasses and putting nasty things in my food. He even once put little stones in my
Okay, nearly breaking my glasses.
Reading his diary, stealing his glasses.
Not breaking glasses, but nearly breaking my
but
glasses.
luckily, they would laugh
is
it off,
insane.
saying it wasn't a big deal. He
What
did
does it
more
say?
awful things, like nearly breaking my glasses and putting nasty things in my food. He even once put little stones in my cereal, but luckily, I found them before they could damage my
Probably
teeth.
vegetables.
When I more awful things, like nearly breaking my
Wait, put
glasses
what
and
in the
putting
cereal?
nasty things in my food. He even once put little stones in my cereal, but luckily, I found them before they could damage my teeth.
Little
When I
stones.
told my mom,
He's trying to
she
kill
dismissed
you.
it, saying this is how brothers bond. Whenever we fought,
Strawberries.
Yeah, me and my brothers, anytime we'd mess around, I always put
Stones
stones
in a cereal.
in a cereal.
Yeah.
He never caught them. He
With
just
ice
ate,
cream.
he just ate them.
That's why he doesn't have teeth now?
Well, that's why he had a lot of kidney stones. They weren't.
David
There
would
are
zero
kidney
in
stones
on
that
my
are actual
insecurities to insult me.
Right.
We went to the same school, so he knew I was being bullied by a few kids. Instead of supporting me, he
Nice.
sided with the bullies, calling me names like ugly loser or hairy monkey, and encouraging them to physically harm me.
Okay, I don't know if he's actually joking or not. Calling me loser or calling me a hairy monkey.
Saying I was just a big failure by a few kids.
The hearing
Instead of
the
supporting
voice
me,
saying
he
hairy
sided
monkey
with the
too.
bullies, calling me names like ugly loser or hairy monkey, and encouraging them to physically harm me.
Bullying's not funny, okay? It's not a joke.
It's not.
It's not a joke.
It's not a joke. It's just funny to hear.
Hearing
AI,
hearing a
say,
voice say
Ugly loser.
and hairy monkey
saying I was just
is
a big
funny.
failure.
Bullying's no joke.
Another time, during a fight over something trivial that I can't even remember, he told me to kill myself. While I could easily brush off most insults, that one really
Okay.
hurt because I was struggling with my mental health at the time. I'm doing better now, but it was devastating to hear that my
Yeah,
own
that-
brother wanted me dead. Since dad
for
was
you.
often at work and mom didn't seem to care much,
Yeah.
she even scolded me once, claiming it was my fault for irritating him. Things progressively worsened. During high school, there was a shocking incident when David attempted to set my hair on fire, and unbelievably, our mother defended him, claiming he was merely playing. Seriously, who behaves like that? Thankfully, my dad eventually sided with me and pointed out the gravity of the situation. He even threatened to call the police on David.
Okay,
This
there we
moment
go.
was a real eye-opener for my brother, as he had
Oh,
never
okay.
faced any
About
consequences for his
that.
actions before.
They really love
He was
chocolate in
genuinely
this
stunned,
video.
and my dad made it clear that enough was enough and that David needed to start respecting his older brother. Later, Dad came into my...
Yeah. Wait.
Wait,
Respect.
he's older?
He's older. So your younger brother's calling you an ugly monkey,
Hairy monkey.
a hairy monkey, and threatening
And
to
nearly breaking
set
your
fire
glasses.
and putting stones. And now I get the stones. The stones, like,
Childish.
yeah, it's childish.
Yeah.
But does it say how old?
room to
Does it
talk.
say how old they were?
I never expected his support because he always told David how similar they were, which was true. Dad admitted that he had waited for years, hoping David would mature, but he was slowly realizing that David was becoming a big bully. Hearing this from my dad was incredibly validating, and I almost broke down in tears. I confessed everything David had done to me over the years and even mentioned the bullying at school. My dad was shocked at how much I had endured. The next day, he spoke to the principal to ensure the bullies were warned about severe consequences if they continued. Later that evening, Dad enrolled me in MMA at our local gym, telling me I needed to man up and stand up to bullies in my life. I admit that a nerdy kid like me trying to learn to fight might have seemed laughable, but I was very focused. I managed my time well to balance my studies and daily workouts, and the MMA classes completely changed my life and physique.
Good for you.
One day, David was up to his antics
He's about to
again.
kick his brother's
He stole
butt.
my pocket
His younger
money,
brother's butt. Yeah, and you just straight up,
Not his
just not the
pocket money.
pocket
we
money.
received for
Straight up
helping with
just kicked
chores.
him. Just give me my
I
money
had been
back.
saving it for a while. David sneaked into my room and took it. I caught him just as he was about to cycle off with his friends. I demanded he return my money,
And
but
you
David
karate
mocked me,
chopped him.
saying all I could do was run to Daddy for help. I don't know what came over me, but I punched him in the face. He was stunned, fell backward, and I retrieved my money from his pocket before throwing him back down. David started crying loudly, which was quite
Oh, yeah.
comical.
That image.
However, my mother rushed out to help him and find out what happened. When she learned I had fought him, she was surprised and reprimanded me, saying I should be a better role model for Dave.
But they're just joking.
But-
Remember the same thing that she said to the other brother earlier. They're just
also,
joking.
they didn't fight. He punched him in the face and he fell. That
So-
wasn't a fight.
I mean, if it was
That
a fight, then he
self-defense.
lost.
Right, exactly.
And also, he did lose his temper. But yeah, after all that,
He took his pocket money. He deserved it.
he took his pocket money. That's true.
And he punched him in the face. He fell and he
You gotta.
said, he took his pocket money, right?
Who seemed to enjoy seeing me
Yeah,
scold.
you gotta expect it.
My mother also complained to my dad about my behavior, saying I needed to be controlled. My dad grimly asked both of us to explain ourselves. I told him how David had stolen the money I had worked hard for and saved, while David tried to justify it by saying he needed the money for a date, and that as his brother, I should help him. However, Dad told David he was lucky I only punched him for stealing because anyone else would have called the police. He continued to tell David
Yeah.
that he had no right to take others'
Straight up.
things without their consent. David didn't like that and threw a tantrum, likely hoping our mother would side with him, but Dad remained
No,
firm.
really good.
When
would
David
hate
realized he wasn't
my
going to
cake.
be punished
Some
for being
chocolate.
hit, he screamed how much he hated me and ran back to his room, locking himself in. Following that incident, David began to distance himself from me. He had finally
hate you, bro.
understood that he couldn't bully me anymore,
hate you
and that
so
even
very
Dad
much.
had stopped supporting his antics. For the first time in a long while, I felt like we were equals. Though he could no longer physically harm me, he resorted to verbal insults when our parents weren't around. His behavior worsened with age, becoming angrier and more short-tempered each year. When I approached him with a question, he would ignore me and walk away, muttering insults like nerd or loser under his breath. If he needed
Oh man, the classics. Straight up classics.
You freaking nerd.
You freaking loser. Those hurt. Those do hurt. They have to be like young teens.
They have to be.
If someone calls me a loser, I'm like, okay.
Just walk around that. F you.
Yeah, don't call anybody a loser, but I feel like it wouldn't bother me that much. Especially nerd. Yeah, nerd. Like in my mind, that's like when you're like school in the 60s or 70s. That's when it probably hurt, but it's like,
Yeah.
but that's like in like a
elementary
movie where it's like, yeah,
school.
nerd.
Nerd.
Yeah. And there,
Yeah,
whatever.
and he knows MMA now, so
to communicate
He's good.
something, he would relay it through our
Nothing
mother
will hurt
instead of speaking to me directly. When I questioned her about why David couldn't just talk to me, she would urge me to be more understanding. I couldn't tell if it was just puberty or genuine hatred. Over time, dealing with his comments became unbearable, and I longed to move out and get away from him. I repeatedly asked my mother to mediate a sit-down conversation for us to resolve our issues, but she always refused, saying she didn't want to get involved.
Okay, adult.
When I asked her opinion on why David
Oh.
treated me this way,
Not
she would
adult,
brush
not
off the
adult.
question. Eventually, I left for my dream university, having earned a scholarship as a top student. My dad threw a party for me,
no.
and even my mom seemed
I
proud.
mean, yes.
However, David remained aloof and distant, barely acknowledging my achievements. The day I left for university was a mix of excitement for the future and relief to escape the toxic home environment. The first few months at university were liberating. I made new friends, enjoyed my classes, and started to build a life separate from the oppressive atmosphere of my childhood. The constant fear of David's verbal attacks lifted, giving me a newfound sense of peace. During my second year, I met my wife Karen at a frat party through a friend, and we immediately clicked. Coming from a religious background, having kids outside of marriage was frowned upon. However, when we discovered she was pregnant in our final year, we decided to marry right after graduation. Our wedding was a small but joyful ceremony.
So they had unprotected.
Baby. Oh.
They had unprotected.
Premarital.
Premarital and unprotected.
With a Karen?
With a Karen. I hope he changed her name, because Karen would be. Then again, this is probably from a long time ago.
Outside of marriage was frowned upon.
Yeah.
Maybe
However,
Karen was all the
when we
rage back
discovered
then.
she was pregnant in our final year, we decided to marry right after graduation. Our wedding was a small but joyful ceremony. Our parents were happy for us, and we enjoyed the celebration. At that moment, I believed Karen was the love of my life. I had always envisioned a monogamous relationship, one woman to come home to and share my life with. Despite other women showing interest over the years, I never pursued anything because I was genuinely content in my marriage.
Oh. He just had to throw in there that other women were interested in
Karen
him.
was my
He had to
But
make
he
it
stayed
clear.
loyal. He stayed
He
loyal.
had to make it clear.
He pulls.
Bingo.
He
It
pulls.
And I
wasn't
never
'cause
wanted
he
to hurt
didn't
her.
have options. He
However,
wanted
I
to-
later uncovered
Yeah,
two
options
incidents
for
of
sure.
infidelity in our marriage. One was an intermittent affair with her married co-worker that spanned several years, and the other was a brief fling with an ex-boyfriend during a visit to
Oh
her
my
family.
gosh.
Some might think I was naive, and looking back, I can't completely disagree. Each time we separated for a while, I chose to forgive my wife. I didn't want to raise our child in a broken home and believed we could overcome these obstacles. The affair with her co-worker happened when we were young, and I attributed it to youthful mistakes and poor judgment. For a period, things seemed to get better. Although I
Okay,
could
it's a
never
poor
fully
judgment
trust
call
her
on your
again,
end.
I did my best to set aside my doubts, knowing that if I chose to forgive, I had to genuinely work toward a fresh start. It's been 4 years since her second betrayal, and I felt confident in my decision to give her another chance.
Ew.
Karen seemed to have changed, and we were genuinely happy, planning our family's future. However, 3 months ago, my world was shattered once more when she revealed that she had been having a long-term affair and suggested that our son might not be mine. Her words struck me like a ton of bricks. A mix of shock, betrayal, and disbelief overwhelmed me. I struggled to comprehend the enormity of her confession. In a daze, I managed to ask why she had kept such a significant secret and how she could have done something so devastating. Her reaction was cold and indifferent, as if she were detached from the pain she caused. Her vague responses left me with more questions than answers. It was a surreal and painful moment, confronting the shattered trust and uncertainty about my own family. I continued to press Karen for the truth because I felt I deserved to know the father of the child I had been raising since birth. Ultimately, she admitted it was David. My eyes
makes
widened in
sense.
shock as I asked,
Oh my god. I forgot the title of the video. Because he went so long into like the bullying thing
Literally, yeah.
and his brother, and I completely forgot that was like the premise of it.
Yeah, it honestly got off topic, but it was a shock, even though I knew.
I
that
continued
was
to
the
press
title.
Karen for the truth because I felt I deserved to know the father of the child I had been raising since birth. Ultimately, she admitted it was David. My eyes widened in shock as I asked Karen what she meant. She
Shocking
explained
every
that she
time.
and David had become friends when I introduced her to my family, and she stayed with us from Thanksgiving until New Year's.
That's
David,
horse
usually
semen.
cold to me, was warm and polite
Just
towards
bad.
her,
I know what
which
horse
made
semen
me glad because I didn't want Karen to feel unwelcome. Karen wanted to be accepted into my family, so she spent significant time with my mom whenever possible. She noticed the rift between David and me and questioned me about it. I opened up about our strained relationship and explained that we might never repair it due to his unresolved feelings. Karen understood but started including David in our outings, hoping it would help us bond.
You say dude.
Whenever we planned to watch a movie, she invited David, and we watched whatever he chose. During this time, David and I exchanged a few words, which was an improvement compared to his usual.
So wait, so is he not? He just ignores the fact that he just.
I think this is talking about when they would go visit his family.
Oh, so.
Like how, like to put the dynamic of what it was like, I guess.
So he
Silent
went-
treatment.
Oh, okay.
I remember
Makes
Karen
sense.
and David
I was
hanging
like,
out
why are
and
you
playing
not
video
addressing-
games together, but I never thought much of it. Karen told me that one
Yeah,
day,
like they're-
David opened up to her about his struggles and a recent breakup. Feeling vulnerable, he struck up a friendship with her. She mentioned that he would harmlessly flirt with her when I wasn't around, and eventually, Things escalated beyond her control. The vision of my wife and brother sleeping together made me feel sick. Karen confessed that she felt guilty afterward and left him, which matched her abrupt decision to go home instead of spending New Year's with me. Although I tried to convince her to stay, she was adamant about leaving. When we met back at college after the holidays, she was her usual cheerful self, so I didn't question anything. 2 weeks later, we found out she was pregnant. Karen
You didn't
admitted she
question
didn't know
anything.
if the child was mine or David's, and with no way to prove it, she chose to stay with me, knowing I was the more dependable brother. This was why we got married. My world felt like it was crashing down.
Jeez.
The son I loved might not even be mine. I asked Karen if she had been sleeping with David recently, and she slowly nodded. She revealed that they had always stayed in touch because their chemistry was undeniable. They would sneak off to hotels, lying to me about working
Oh
overtime.
my god.
She admitted that half of her business trips were actually romantic getaways with him. I asked why she married me if she wanted my brother, and Karen said she didn't want to be the one to break off the marriage. She saw me as a wonderful father to our son and decided to stay.
What?
In her words, she made a mistake and didn't know when to stop. I told Karen I was glad she told me the truth but that I was going to pack up and leave. She started crying, asking for forgiveness, and expected me to yell at her. Instead, I calmly packed my clothes.
Too late.
Karen insisted that if I loved her, I should fight for her and that mistakes happen in every marriage.
What?
Gaslighting 101.
Literally manipulation.
That's
Please.
crazy.
If you love me, fight for me after she just cheated on him with his
Yeah.
brother?
Pick me, choose me. How would I cheat on you with your brother? That's insane.
That's crazy.
And so there's like no way. Like if it's your brother, there's no way to like genetically test to see if it's like.
Oh, you're right.
Right?
I don't think so. I think you're too close in genetics.
When she realized I wasn't going to do anything,
Yeah, that
she
sucks.
changed tactics, saying our son would be affected by a divorce and that children shouldn't be raised in broken homes. I reminded her that I might not even be the father, which made her cry more and accuse me of
Manipulation.
being cruel. It seemed like
That's
she
a pound
believed nothing
cake.
could make me want to leave the marriage. Perhaps it was partly my
I mean,
fault for letting things
for the
slide in the
story, you're
past.
calling it a pancake.
While I did love her, it felt more like it stemmed from thinking we had a son together and had been together since college. Karen kept insisting it wasn't too late to fix things, but I struggled to believe her and had no patience
Fair.
left. Trust was a major issue, and her words felt hollow. Even if I forgave her, I could never forget she slept with my brother. I've always believed in forgiving mistakes because we're all flawed, but this was beyond acceptable limits. I left her crying on the doorstep and checked into a hotel.
That's true. We are.
The next day, I went straight to my parents and revealed everything about my wife's affair with David, explaining how they had been secretly sleeping together for years. The shock on their faces was undeniable.
Mom's gonna defend.
True to
the
her
lunch.
nature, my mother
Oh, wait.
initially tried to defend David, insisting that her boy could never do such a thing to his own brother.
I
Determined
knew
to
it.
expose the
I just
truth,
remembered
I
that
asked
he
my
gets
parents
the
to remain
inheritance or
silent and let me
whatever.
call David in front of them.
That's
I
where the
instructed
story
them to
is
stay
going.
quiet so I could catch David off guard, making him believe it was a private conversation. When David answered the phone, I confronted him about the affair. At first he vehemently denied it, refusing to accept any
Oh
responsibility.
my gosh.
However, when I told him that Karen had admitted to everything,
Good
he
work.
started blaming her, calling her characterless. He claimed it wasn't his fault if women were attracted to him and that he was the better looking brother. I told him firmly that I would expose him to everyone. When David mocked me,
That's
saying no one would believe me because he was the golden child, I scoffed at his arrogance and thanked him for confirming the truth, knowing our parents had heard everything. David went quiet and then spluttered, trying to explain himself and salvage his image. My mother, still
on
in
you.
shock, demanded an explanation from David. He stuttered through a feeble attempt to justify his actions, blaming everyone else but himself and desperately trying to shift the blame onto Karen. I could see my mother, who had once been protective of her favored son, now felt a mix of disappointment and anger. In that charged moment, I felt a strange sense of vindication. For years, I had endured David's torment. Now, the truth was out, and the roles were reversed. It was David who stood exposed, his actions laid bare for everyone to see. As David's words faltered, my father, usually reserved in his expressions, couldn't contain his disappointment. He asked me to pass him the phone and began to speak to David. David, my father began, his voice laden with disappointment.
Oh, no.
What you've done isn't just a betrayal of your brother, but a betrayal of this family. You slept with your brother's wife and continued the affair even after they were married. Your actions have severe consequences and have irreversibly shattered the trust we had in you. I raised both of you to value
Tell
family, loyalty, and decency.
Tell
What you've
Dad.
shown today defies everything I've tried to teach you. He paused, letting
You think this is a what's it called? Like a family of color, like a Mexican family, or I feel like this gives like minority family, you know?
Why?
Because they always like have a favorite son, and they're like, no, they wouldn't do that. That's what this gives. And them being like, and the dad being like, you like betrayed the loyalty of this family.
Yeah.
It gives.
Maybe. I mean, my family, there was definitely like a favorite child, but then again, I don't know any other way. I feel like that's every family though. Everyone has a golden child.
I guess just from the way the dad is talking to the
The weight of
son,
his words sink into David's
he
conscience.
gives.
Your
Maybe.
disregard for your brother's feelings and the lack of respect for his marriage are unacceptable. You've not only hurt him but also torn apart the bonds that hold our family together. Your mother and I are partly to blame for what you've become, but we will no longer tolerate this behavior. From today, you're cut off from the college funds I set up for you. You'll have to figure out how to pay your university fees on your own. I will also stop funding your lifestyle. Do you think it makes you more of a man to sleep with married women? Let's see how you manage without my money. Throughout this, I maintained a composed demeanor. Although I initially wanted to
Good
scream
for
at
the
David,
dad.
watching my dad punish him was the ultimate vindication. I had exposed his true nature, and it was clear he had underestimated the consequences. My mother, despite David's persistent protests, continued to
Hey, you know what would make this cake better if I just put donuts on it and Reese's and Kit Kats and stuff.
Did you see the video that they made? It was like, this is what all you can eat with the calories that are in one crumble cookie.
No.
It was a lot of food. Anyway, imagine how much food you could eat with the calories on that cake.
They have a donut that has like 1,300 calories or something like that, probably more. 1,100.
justify
What
him,
was it?
but my
I
father
don't know,
swiftly ended the
1250,
call,
something like that,
shutting
something
down
crazy.
David's attempts to explain away
Anyways.
his actions. Afterward, my mom approached me and hugged me. It had been a long time since we shared such a moment, but in that embrace, there was an unspoken understanding and support amid the family turmoil. She apologized for not believing me all this time. My 14-year-old self could never have imagined this moment, being vindicated and embraced by my mother. Following this, my dad helped me find a good lawyer to divorce Karen.
Inner child healing.
She and her lawyer tried to fight dirty, asking for alimony since I earned more than her. But her affair played heavily in my favor. We also conducted a paternity test, and it was confirmed that David was indeed the father of the child. The news was incredibly painful, even worse than discovering Karen's infidelity.
How?
Okay, so I guess
I
you
was
can't
furious
tell.
that the son I had loved and raised wasn't mine. However, I decided to stay strong. Karen begged me to continue visiting my son, arguing he shouldn't be punished for the situation, but I couldn't bear to see him. He reminded me too much of David, and I hated it. After my divorce was finalized, I felt a sense of freedom wash over me as I moved into my own bachelor pad. It felt surreal to live alone since I had married so young and never really had the chance to experience independence. However, my naturally independent nature allowed me to quickly adapt to my new lifestyle, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. 2 weeks ago, my dad called to tell me he was considering changing his will because he didn't want to leave anything to David. My dad is incredibly stubborn, and once he decided to cut David out of his life,
Dang.
he stuck to it. David tried reaching out to our parents and even showed up at their doorstep, begging for forgiveness, but they refused to let him in. Even my mother, who usually gave in to David's tantrums, seemed done with him, though it must have been hardest for her. David never texted me to apologize for what he had done, showing he didn't regret his actions. He was just upset about being cut off from our parents. Dad told me he planned to leave everything to me, ensuring David wouldn't contest it later. He would leave David only $1. My eyes widened in shock as my dad had worked hard his parents. Dad told me he planned to
$1?
leave everything to me,
Well, no,
ensuring
no,
David wouldn't
no,
contest
$1,
it later.
$1.
He would leave David only $1. My eyes widened in shock as my dad had worked hard his entire life, including his assets,
$1.
retirement fund, and life insurance. The total came to nearly $2 million. The only condition in his will was that if my dad
I
passed
mean-
away before my mom, she would continue living in their house, even though ownership would transfer to me. I didn't mind this, as I wanted to care for my mom in her final days. Somehow, David found out about this, and, unable to reach our parents, called me yesterday, trying to make amends. He explained how he was struggling with college and that after Karen discovered the paternity of the child, she had been pestering him for child support.
He wants the will.
He said he had no money and was looking for part-time jobs but couldn't find anything.
Yeah, it makes
He
sense.
begged me to talk to our family to start fresh since he really needed my help. I laughed in his face and told him I was done with him. I reminded him that he should have thought about the consequences before sleeping with my wife and getting her pregnant. David argued that I was being unfair and that Karen was also to blame, to
Yeah,
which
you
I
tell him.
agreed. I reminded him that I had divorced her, making her his
Mr. Krabs
responsibility
is
now.
unfair. The Krusty Krab is unfair. Mr. Krabs is in there.
Yeah, that's what
Was it plotting?
He shouldn't be
his
calling me to
approach?
complain about her or the child since these were the consequences
Something
of
like
his
that.
own actions. David started to raise his voice, but I interrupted, reminding him that he was no longer the favored child in the family but the black sheep who had slept with his own brother's wife. At that moment, David began to cry, telling me how everyone, including our grandparents and relatives, had turned against him. While this was true, it was no longer my concern. I told him we were done and that he should never call me again since I no longer considered him my brother. Since then, I've replayed the conversation in my mind. Despite my hatred for my brother,
Tough.
I had never heard him cry, at least not since we were kids. I won't lie. It did hurt me a bit to see him so helpless. So, I guess I'm here to ask if I should talk to our parents about him or if I would be an asshole if I don't. Update 1. Hi everyone, many of you have been asking why I am no longer in contact with my son Henry, and some have even called me cruel.
An update?
I need to explain that I am not comfortable raising another man's child. This isn't a stepson situation. I was led to believe Henry was my son,
Makes
only
sense.
to later discover he
I
is
would
actually
feel-
my brother David's son. Naturally, this revelation hurt.
I couldn't, in my right mind, raise someone else's kid, and like
if they cheated on you.
if they cheat on me, and also like it's my brother too. I don't know. I just couldn't imagine.
Yeah, raising your brother's kid that came from an affair.
Deeply, and I cried over it for days.
Yeah.
The main
that's
reason
insane.
I don't want any contact with Henry is that I no longer want Karen in my life. If I remain connected to her child, she will find a way to re-enter my life, and I need my space. You may think I'm cruel or selfish, but I can't see him ever again, at least not for a very long time. Update 2. Most of you correctly guessed that it was my mother who informed David about my dad changing his will,
Nephew.
leading David to call me as a last resort to fix things. I confronted her in front of my dad, and she broke down, saying I had punished David enough and that he had learned his lesson. My dad firmly told my mother that if she believed what David
Oh my God.
What? See? That.
So that solidifies that David is the golden, like not the golden child, but the favorite.
solidifies that it has to be a minority family. They're Indian or Mexican, 100%.
How?
What do you mean?
I just don't understand.
100%.
did was forgivable,
Comment down
then he
below.
could no longer stay married to her
Yeah.
because he could never forgive such a betrayal. This threat silenced my mother. My dad made it clear that if she ever talked with David again and we found out, she could pack her bags and leave. As I mentioned, my dad is very stubborn. Hopefully my mother will learn.
Yeah.
Wait. The dad said that to the mom?
Yeah. That if he found out that she talks to David again.
Oh my God! Wait, that's cruel.
From her mistake.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see.
Like-
We're still on the second update. There's
Update
probably
3.
like 3 updates or something.
Reddit. It's been 5 months since my last update.
Okay.
My relationship with my parents has improved over the past few months. My dad and I go golfing every weekend, and he treats me more like a buddy than a
For you,
son.
bud.
Although my mother misses David, she
Nice.
has stayed away from him. The last I
Nice.
heard about
How'd you do
David
on the
was
back
from my
end?
cousin, who said David had been asking everyone for money, and eventually had to drop out of college because he couldn't afford the fees. He and Karen are living together, and he has a part-time job as a mechanic.
That line is crooked.
Apparently they are raising Henry
That's the
together,
Powerpuff
which is a
Girls
good
colors.
thing, I guess. I never discussed David with my parents, and they don't bring him up either.
Well, I mean,
For
he's the
everyone
dad.
asking,
Oh, it is
I am doing
Powerpuff
quite
Girls.
well. I was promoted at my job 2 months ago, so my salary has significantly improved.
Everybody.
I haven't been dating anyone as I feel I still need time
No.
and space to heal.
Powerpuff Girls?
I've been going to therapy, so we'll see how that works out. Thank you for watching.
Why is
If
this
you
on
haven't
here?
subscribed yet, please do so and hit the notification bell to stay updated with
course.
more shocking. Brother made my life hell, then got my wife pregnant. Now he wants my help after our
How long was that?
Crazy story. I think the dad is probably going too hard into it. I mean,
Yeah.
regardless, he's still the dad.
Yeah.
David messed up. And he even says the $2 million inheritance.
Yeah. That's what I was saying.
Did they mention it was $2 million?
Yeah. In the story?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I blocked out. Must have been looking at the cake. Well, that's crazy. I think David made terrible choices. The dad was too stubborn. The mom favored David too much. I feel like the brother did everything, in my opinion, right. I wouldn't reach out to my brother if that happened. I would never talk to my brother if that happened.
Yeah.
That's not my kid. You're the dad, David. You know?
Yeah.
You got to take care of the kid. So it's like, David's taking care of the kid now. It's like, good. You're the dad. You're doing your job, you know?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I don't.
Yeah, I think. Well, one, I think the story's made up. Too many details.
Too many details.
Too many details. When people lie, they say too many things.
I have to say the hairy monkey? The hairy monkey part, I think is too good of a roast to like just to just think of it on the fly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the dad got too involved.
Yeah.
I definitely understand you not wanting to enable an asshole son, like by him enabling David, by giving him money and stuff for his lifestyle and for college. Like I understand that, but end of the day, you're the dad, and I think you're kind of supposed to stay out of it. Like, I think yes, cutting him off is good, but he took it. I think he took it too far when he got mad at his wife for continuing to talk.
Yeah, because I mean, you're still the kid's parents,
right?
Regardless of like the mistakes they make or whatever.
Right.
Like I get the brother not talking to David, but the parents, I mean, they're still going to be his parents.
Right.
Regardless of like any mistake that they make, you know. Obviously, with certain severities, I get, you know, the parents not talking to them. But to me, it's like, yeah, it was messed up, but something like that, I think the parents should still be there for them.
Yeah.
But yeah. Thanks for joining us on this Reddit story. There's going to be plenty more in the future. If you have any suggestions, leave them down in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe, don't forget to like, and don't forget to comment. But I will catch you guys in the next one.